Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another vlog here, or a radio show here. Although I haven't done one of these in like 3-4 days, so sorry I didn't do one Sunday, sorry I didn't do one Monday, sorry I didn't do it Tuesday, but I'm going to do it my Wednesday. Thought I'd do a gear change show. I know I do these on Saturday, but I'm going to do two this week. I'm going to do one this week so I can make up some of the content that I missed this week and this week, because I just want to talk about race cars, I guess. So it's funny. While I was bagging vegetables yesterday, because I've been produce and bag vegetables on Tuesday and Wednesday, and today. Well, back today and yesterday and today. So I'm noticing that, I was remembering talking about the variety of GT3 series that we had, since GT3 is going to be a huge thing in the next couple of years. So a lot of people don't know how. So for those of you who don't remember from the sports car racing a history video, prototypes and GT cars, GT3 was started. Well, the GT3 style class was actually. A lot of people will say that the GT3 style car was started in. GT3 main class was started in 2005, 2006. That's actually not true. GT3's roots actually go back further than that. So for those of you who are of a certain age, GT3 is not new. It's basically what GT3 is it's road cars turned up a little bit and made to a certain specification. So the modern GT3 car started with the Porsche 911 GT3 RSR back in 1999. 2000. The first ever race for a 911 RSR, but wasn't known as a GT3. It was known as a 911 GT3. It was known like GT3. The RSR and RS and the RSR didn't come out till later, until 2000. I think the RS came in 2021, 2022, and I think 2001, 2002. I think by 2003, 2004, we had the RSR cars, and then by 2005, 2006, we had the Evo cars and all this other stuff that we had back then. But GT3 racing actually goes back further than the early 2000s. You kind of have to look back to not the 90s, but you have to look back into the you have to look back into the 70s and 80s. Actually, a lot of people are gonna sit there and go, "Oh, there was no GT3 cars back then because the 70s and 80s." Well, no, there wasn't. But there was a class called GTU. GTU. Back when IMSA first started, they had prototypes. They had Group C GTP prototypes. They had Camel Lights or GT Lights, GTLs. Those were based on C2 or Group 2 or Group C2 cars. The cars that had smaller engines, less fuel available, more fuel available to them, because they had smaller engines, and the big Group C guys, who had the big bellowing turbos and V12s and stuff like that, had less. And then you had the two production classes in IMSA and like Trans where they were known as GTO and GTU. GTO was more of the 6-liter sledgehammers and turbo Porsches and stuff like that turbo Porsches. I'm going to say 935s, the 930 and the 935s, you know, the cars that kind of, the early 911s. In fact, I think the earlier, in fact, I think production-based, minimally production-based road cars, I think goes back in the early 70s with like Group 4, with like Group 4 cars. Group 4 cars were like, actually, were they Group 4 cars? Yeah, Group 4 cars. These little production-based cars, they were touted up with some suspension. They had an aerodynamic body kit. This was like Porsche, Alfa Romeo, and BMW and stuff like that. These were cars that had below a certain liter engine. GTU cars in the 70s and 80s were like Mazda RX-8s, you know, little BMW 3 Series with a couple of turbos in it, and you know, Dodge, all Dodge Charger Daytonas that were based off Mitsubishi cars with 2-liter turbos and stuff like that. These were cars challenge cars that were modified, but not very, the Buick Rita, I think not the Grand National, but there was the Camaro was also lightly modified at all. You know, the small IROC engine, 5-liter V8s and stuff like that. You know, small little production cars that were going to evolve into what it is today. Now there were some GTU cars that were 4-liter turbos and stuff like that. I mean, now it depends on, and it depended on money and stuff like that. But GTU cars were like Mazda RX-7, stuff that had little rotary engines, and Honda cars, and you know, stuff that was economy based, but it wasn't heavily modified. But the cars, GTO cars, had around, I'm gonna say around 550, 600, 700 horsepower, depending on what you had. GTU cars, maybe half that, probably had 350, 450 horsepower, and they weren't meant to go very fast. I know there was a GTO, I know a lot of people saying, oh, there was a GTO Mazda RX-7, but that was like late 80s. And stuff like that. So I remember that car like 600 horsepower, because it had a 3-rotor engine, not a two-rotor like like some of the GTU cars had. That was the difference. 3-rotor was usually 3 or 4-rotor was usually 4-rotor car was usually GTU because it had higher displacement. Because a GTO car was probably 4 liters and up, and a 2-something 4-rotor GT 4-rotor engine was probably 4-liter, 4.6 liters, or versus 1.3 or whatever it was like a 2-liter or a 3-liter, based on the capacity size of the how many rotors it had. So if it had 2 rotors, it was kind of a GTU car. It was a 4-rotor, that was a GTO car because it had more displacement. Get it? So GTU started out in the 1970s in certain ones. It was either TC or it was either Group 4 or Group 5. Actually, no, Group 5 was prototypes. Group 4 was more or American Challenge was more GT3, and then eventually that happened. But there was a unique. But those were unique cars and stuff like that. But there was a series in the early 2000s that I used to watch on Speed Channel called the Speed World Challenge, and Speed World Challenge had some pretty interesting cars. They had Audi S4 Quattros and stuff like that. They had Audi V8 Quattros and stuff like that. They had I remember watching Audi dominate with these little four-wheel drive Audis. I remember they used to do this, but I'll explain. So Speed World Challenge was kind of like Trans Am a little bit, but more for sports cars, because Trans Am existed, but not as big as it is again today, because it was only revived. The true form of it was only revived and rechanged about 2 decades ago. I think early 2000 was when they really kind of put it back to where it kind of put it into modern standards, because GTO, well, not GTO, but TA cars have 5-liter or 6-liter, have like 5-liter V8s. Since they've since gone to 6-liter 370 cubic inch motors. Basically, they're NASCAR cars, but with sports car credentials. But anyway, so this was more of a sports car like Trans Am. So there were 2 classes. There was the GT Challenge car. There was the GT class, and then there was like the touring sedan class and stuff like that. Like there was a smaller class and stuff like that. So if I can remember correctly, so it started in Pro World Challenge. Speed World Challenge and Speed World Challenge. Speed World Challenge, Speed World Challenge has been around since the 80s, but Speed World Challenge, it's now the Blonde Pond GT World Challenge America. It's now GT3, GT4, TCR, but it was done by the SCCA, which also did Trans Am. It was, as I said, it was like Trans Am, but not really. So there used to be touring cars. So back when it started in the 80s, it started in 1984. It started out as an endurance championship. And as I said, it was, and I was right, Shelby Charger, the Dodge Shelby Charger, was a TC car, Corvette, Celine Mustang. Then eventually it went to the Trans Am car, and it went to SEC World Challenge in the 90s. So yeah, it was known as, so they were divided into GT and touring cars. So GT cars were, from what I can remember, so I remember when, So I remember for the longest time, it was, they had cars like the Dodge Viper Coupe, and so they had the Dodge Viper Coupe, the Ford Mustangs, and I don't think it was like till 2010 that they actually did GT and GTS, and then eventually the GT1, GT8, GTC, and GTS, they kind of screwed all these up, and then you had TC, TCA, TCV. Stuff like that, but so when Pirelli World Challenge, so when Speed World Challenge came out, when it became kind of what it, GT3 kind of started out, the GT3 class kind of started out as lightly tuned production cars, not really serious. These back then they were more sprint cars. So the races at so they had races at Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, and stuff like that. and St. Petersburg, anywhere where the ALMS or the Indy cars were running. So at the time, I believe. So they used to have, so in the early days, they used to have Corvettes. They used to have the Audi RS4 with all-wheel drive. Cadillac came around with the CTSV, which won many, many years. Porsche 911s also kind of came in there. I remember watching Lasse Aschenbach and Randy Popes won like 3 championships in a row one year, and I think I remember watching Cadillac win 3 years in a row. But the GT cars that were used in the early 2000s weren't really GT cars. They were more Grand Tour like cars, so they had Grand Touring parts, anything that, and a lot of people sat there, and a lot of people used to sit there and ask me, he says, why are they racing? I usually used to talk to somebody at school. Somebody used to watch it with me at school. They're like, why is a 4-wheel drive 4-door sedan able to compete with a Dodge Viper and a Corvette with a bigger motor? So a lot of people. So back when the Audi RS4 came out, the S4 came with a 4.2 liter V8, and they get the idea to turbocharge it and also put all-wheel drive in the car and put up against Porsches, Audis, BMWs, and Dodge Vipers and the like. And I think after a while, Nissan came when the GTR started becoming prominent in 2007. Somebody brought the GTR along, and then it turned into this whole GT3 style thing. That's kind of when it was after 2006 that they started to kind of go to the GT3 route. But I remember the first couple of seasons watching it on TV, watching Corvette go at it. I remember Dodge, and I remember all the Corvette guys driving the Corvettes, and then when the Cadillacs came around, the Corvette guys used to run. Like Ron Fellows, Ian Magnuson, and Johnny O'Connell used to run, and Andy Pilgrim, all the former GM drivers that used to race Corvette and stuff like that. Kelly Collins used to run the cars. I think Andy Pilgrim won in 2004, 2005, and what was very cool was what was weird is everyone's like, so why is the Cadillac CTSV sedan a GT car? It's not. It's a sedan. It's not a 2-door. Because it's got a 6-liter V8, 5.7 liter V8, and a 6-liter V8, depending on the year. A lot of people consider that a Grand Tourer because it went over 170 miles an hour, went over 150, 160 miles, 150, 160, 170 miles an hour. So they're like, it's a GT car because they can compete with them. And these cars were not. And a lot of people sit there and like, these GT cars are getting too heavy because of BOP and all this other stuff. A lot of people are like, this BOP thing, we kind of liked it when power wasn't taken away and when restrictors weren't a thing, and it's all unfair. They didn't have anything to do with that. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. BOP is not the... BOP has been around a lot longer than today. BOP and GT3 machinery is kind of prominent today, but it wasn't exclusive. I think, like until the mid 2000s. I don't think it was exclusive until Ferrari, Corvette, and they would use restrictors in a way to reduce speeds on certain cars to slow them down. Just to make sure that the playing field was even, make sure the lap times were ahead, but they didn't do it just to make sure one car wouldn't win, one car wouldn't lose, because they kind of wanted the cars to kind of all run within a certain way, but also run fair, because they kind of tested the cars and all that other stuff. So, and I remember the Corvette and Aston Martin's kind of setting them around the same lap times anyway, because they kind of engineered around the changes anyway. So I remember Cadillac winning with the CTSV a couple of times, and them coming close in the championship a few times. I remember around 2008, 2009 is kind of when the GT3 cars kind of started to take storm, and people started to kind of take notice of them. So people started doing GT3 911s and Audi this, Audi that, and they were able to take advantage of the fact that not a lot of the, and they were kind of taking advantage that guys like Cadillac and, oh yeah, and Volvo had an S60 twin turbo, 600 horsepower S60 sedan. I remember Randy Pope's driving that and actually dominating. I think they won one year. I can't remember. They did win one year. Yeah, because it shows up right here. Randy Pope's 2010 S60. Yep, I remember that. And then Johnny O'Connell and basically winning from 2012 to 2005 in Cadillacs and stuff like that. And then eventually McLaren and stuff like that came in, and Ferraris come in there, and then I remember Ginetta also has been in there. You know, they were able to, you know, and a lot of people were like, well, how come a big V8? Well, so a lot of people will sit there and go, well, if a big V8, if the big V8 cars are going up against little touring cars, and how is a 4-liter car, how's a 6-liter V8 supposed to go up to an 8-liter V10 in a Dodge Viper? Because the Dodge Viper used to have the competition coupes, and I remember Tommy Archer and Olivier Beretta and a bunch of these other guys were able to dominate. I remember Tommy Archer always getting off to some great starts early at Sebring and stuff like that over the season. And then as the season progressed, as they won, their results got slightly worse, and they weren't able to finish. They weren't able to be as fast at the beginning of the races, and they had to kind of time themselves, and they had to kind of budget their tire wear and their fuel consumption and how the cars handled, because after you won a race, they used to put success ballast, and depending on what position you were in and how many times you won, the more time, basically what happened was, what success ballast is the more times you win, the more weight they put on the car. So the car can have, so you can win like 3 or 4 times in a season, 3 or 4 races in a season, but you will, you can win like 3 races in a row, but the car will gain like 10, 15 pounds of, will gain like 20, 30, 40 pounds of ballast. And what that did was that allowed Porsche, Cadillac, and Aston Martin and Ferrari and a bunch of the other guys to kind of catch up and be able to capitalize and win races in order to do that. And some cars actually, some teams actually had to kind of scale back their wins, and that's what kind of happened. A lot of teams actually had to scale back their strategy, maximize their strategy, and figure out how they were going to win around this, because the cars couldn't be modified, the cars couldn't be over-engineered, the cars had to be a certain way. They couldn't just sit there and make modifications or turn the turbo boost up. They had to run what they had, because everything was locked in and homologated at the beginning of the season. They couldn't do anything, and I think a couple of cars got their air restrictors changed. I remember Cadillac dominating for back one season when they first started. They ended up having to get their engines knocked back a little bit. The cars were making stock, and the cars were making almost 550 horsepower, and they had to be scaled back to like 400, back to like 500 or so, or 480, because they were just really taking advantage of all the weight, stuff like that. And you got to remember, a Cadillac CTSV sedan weighed about 4,000 pounds. And you're probably like, well, how does that happen? Well, they lightened it and stuff like that, and they were able to get it to like 3,000 pounds. And of course, with success ballast and stuff like that, the car weighs a little bit more, and you can obviously, I think I forget how much max success ballast you could have gotten, but I'm pretty sure you could have gotten like up to 40 kilos or something like that, which is about 800, which is about 80 pounds, and that's a lot. And a lot of people don't think, well, 40 pounds is nothing in a car that weighs 8,000 pounds. The car's not going to feel it. A car's going to feel that weight, because a car that's made out of, because a car that has, they have ballast weights, and they have ballast weights. They have little lead bars and stuff like that, and they can distribute where they can put the ballast in order to make sure that the car's balanced and stuff like that. When that weight, when those weight bars, when those ballast weights are in the car, it can affect how the car brakes, it can affect how the car turns, it can affect the tire wear and stuff like that, which is why a lot of the teams needed to needed to save their tires over the 50-minute sprint, and they didn't have to do a pit stop, so they couldn't just refuel and do whatever. You had to run a certain amount of fuel, and you had to run your tires, so as your fuel burnt down, you had to also manage your how drastically the car changed. And sometimes ballasted cars acted differently than non-ballasted cars. So at the beginning, you had all your fuel on board. The cars had, I think, 100-liter race tanks, and I believe 100 liters is I think it's like 100 plus pounds on the car. So the cars with ballast. So if you got to remember, the cars with ballast, if you had 80 pounds worth of ballast, you have 100 pounds worth, and you have more than like 100 pounds worth of fuel in there. You have all that fuel in there. Fuel's gonna weigh you down another 100 pounds or something like that, or that can really affect the handling, and that can really affect how the car's lap times. And this is the reason why when you go to a Formula 1 race today, you guys will notice as the cars burn off fuel, the cars get faster and faster, and they get better and better performance, which is hence why they're actually able to do their fastest laps at the end of the race, versus right in the middle, where they could just push, and just win out right back in the Chmage era. So eventually they did actually go to GT3. I think it was like 2012, 2013 they started going to GT3. I remember going to, actually 2011, 2012, I remember going to Lime Rock and seeing some of the cool GT3 cars. There was the Audi R8, there was the Mercedes SLS AMG GT3. I think BMW came up with the M3 at the time, came up with the GT3 M3 or something like that, or some BMW GT3. Actually, no, there was a GT3 M3 back then. So, or a Z11 or a Z4 or something like that. They all had cool, they all had cool cars. Actually, yeah, Z4 had a GT3 car. But I remember all these cars running, and then you go to, actually, I'll get into the touring car classes in the next video. I'll go do the touring car class thing in the next video, I think on Saturday. But yeah, so a lot of people think, oh, GT3 cars, they're brand new, and BOP's brand new. GT3, production-based, lightly modified cars, but spec'd up to make them go faster, have been around since like the 70s. So, been around since like the 70s, early 70s, early 80s. So it's not really, they're given better fenders and stuff like that, wider tires and stuff like that. Have you ever seen a Group 4 Pantera or a 911 Turbo RSR or something like that? Early Turbo RSR, slant nose, you guys will know what I'm talking about. Those cars only had maybe 300-400 horsepower, but those were way more powerful than stock, but they were also very light. I think Group. Actually, no. Group 5 was actually the GT cars. Actually, Group 6 was the prototypes. Group 5, Group 4, Group 5 were kind of like Group 4, Group 5 were kind of like the early GT cars. If you guys have seen the ARS23-78 Capris with the 3.4 liter Cosworth BDA engine and stuff like that, you guys will know what I'm talking about, and Panteras and stuff like that with the V8 and stuff like that, and also the Group 5 cars, which were the fire-breathing 1.4 liter silhouette race cars with Porsche and Capri, and also Zaxby Capris, and the silhouette 911, the silhouette M3s and the 3 Series and stuff like that. Those, the 320i silhouette cars and stuff like that. That's kind of where that kind of all started, and those cars only had 350, 400 horsepower, very lightly modified. So yeah, GT3 is nothing new and BOP is nothing new, so I thought I'd just give you guys kind of the variety, and you know, that's kind of the reason why I kind of like GT3 racing, because it was very accessible to a lot of people. You didn't have to break the bank, and it's going to make a lot of good racing in 2024 when we switch to LMGT3 or GTD Pro or GTD, depending on which series you follow. So yeah, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this was a long one. Sorry if this was a mouthful, but kind of wanted to get the whole GT3 thing off and kind of just show you guys what kind of how GT3 kind of became around and how it started out and what it evolved into and what it's kind of going to mean for IMSA and the World Endurance Championship come 2024. So with Ford, Aston Martin, all these other guys coming in, it's going to be an interesting couple of years when things come around, especially with electrification coming as well. A lot of GT3 cars are probably going to be electrified at some point, because as soon as the Corvette gets its, as soon as the E-Ray gets the technology, they're going to do that, and they're going to put that in the car, and the cars will probably get faster, and we'll probably get a GTD hybrid class or whatever, GT3 hybrid class or whatnot. So it's, I think it's going to get, unless they forgo hybrid systems, we'll see. We don't know what they're going to do, so I thought I'd give you guys a premise of what GT racing was like and how it started out, and just how cool it will be next year. So, and the Speed World Challenge was kind of the precursor to that, to the modern era GT3 series. But its grandparents started in Group 4 and Group 5 back in the IMSA and the DRM, or the Deutsche Rennmobil, or the DRM, which was the Deutsche Rennsport Masters, which was basically German Motorsports Masters, which basically started out as DTM, and then eventually went to silhouette racing. But I'll talk about the DRM and silhouette GT racing and touring car racing in another video. I know there's a lot of that stuff in Japan and over in Germany and over here in America, because you know, we had that in the GTO series with the Silicas and stuff like that by Dan Gurney's All American Racers. But I'll get into that in another video. I thought to give you guys just kind of a synopsis on different GT3 series and how it kind of launched the modern GT3 push these days, and kind of give you the idea about BOP and stuff like that, and tell you guys that it didn't start with GT3 and everything in GT because somebody was holding their hand back and stuff like that. So Pro World Challenge was kind of the first series that kind of said, nah, you guys weren't what you brought, and you guys see what you guys got, and we'll penalize you if you do, and then lose a couple races, you'll get your weight back, and then you can win again. So, and some manufacturers lost that gamble, and some manufacturers won that gamble. So, but yeah, might come out here for another one of these gear change shows. I'll see you guys. I'm actually going to produce a vlog tomorrow during get out of work, and then I'm going to produce one Friday. I'm going to do a gear change show Friday, and I actually have to redo and recap some of. I have to do a voiceover and recap some of the stuff in a Gran Turismo video because the audio in the game really is terrible, and I have to get the cars a little. I have to get my microphone to be a little bit stronger because I think my video kind of sucked. I don't put out my product unless I know it's going to be good. So I will see you guys then, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys learned something about the history and kind of the origins of GT3. For those of you who think you guys know something else and probably figure out detail that I missed, kind of point me in the right direction, and I'll change my description going forward. So I hope you guys stay for this 36 minutes. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm probably going to talk about work, because work I just don't want to talk about. I'll talk about how I'm getting on with the Samsung, because I've had this for a month. Because I've had this for about 2 months now. So I'll give you guys a synopsis of what I think about it, and I will give you guys an idea of actually my Apple Watch is about to turn a year old, I think, this year as well. So I think it's at the end of August, early September, that it's going to turn about a year old. So I'll give you guys the year update. I haven't been using it a lot because I haven't been able to charge it and find a charger. I just got a new charger and stuff like that because I think I broke my old one. They're kind of old, and so anyway. And then I'll tell you guys how I like my GoPro. Please don't be dead. No, you're not. You're on 6%, but I'm going to have to obviously charge you at some point. But yeah, I'll see you guys later, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. On Saturday, the topic will be, well, actually, I revealed the topic. It's going to be about touring car classes and how that kind of relates to GT3, and how that kind of started the whole lightly modified but slightly still production based it was. So and probably confuse you guys even more about how sedans kind of race in a GT Challenge spec series. So GT Challenge style series. So yeah, I'll bid you guys adieu and hope you guys enjoyed this. Good night.